How I find undervalued properties for my clients, for myself, and for anybody who wants to do uplift. Now, the reason that it's so important is, let's face it, with the interest rate being where it is, if you're doing 100% finance, as in you're drawing down the equity from your residential property or your commercial property to buy again, or simply that you've got money parked in your offset and you're taking that money out, there's a cost to that, and it's really hard to break even. You're going to be in negative territory in residential, but also slightly in commercial as well. So the only way to really beat the market is to actually find more uplift properties that are undervalued. So what exactly is an uplift? How you find value add properties? Three things that I look at these are the three things that I look at when I'm looking for those undervalued properties, and I'm going to give you a final tip to really help you accelerate and understand what makes a deal work. So tune in all the way to the end of the video so I can give you that full tip and you can really action it right now in this current market. So let's get started. When we're looking at undervalue, what exactly is undervalue? Undervalue is when a property which ordinarily might be sold or bought for $1 million is being sold for, let's say, $800,000. Now, why is it being sold for $800,000? A lot of people think, well, what's wrong with that property? Is it the property that's wrong? Or is it that it's something that's creating the undervaluedness of it? Can I fix that problem and make $200,000 from it rather than thinking it's all too hard and walking away from it? Because that $200,000 equates to somewhere around 20% gain, which will allow you to buy again so much sooner. Doing it right means that you can get into the next property within 6 to 9 months of buying your first property. That's why creating uplift is one of the fundamental and most important strategies in any property, but most importantly in commercial property, because right now you can do it faster in commercial property than in residential property. So we already know that undervalue is where you can buy a property for much less than what is really worth in this market. And then what exactly is uplift? Uplift is when you actually realize the value gain you've added to this property. So a lot of people in residential call it manufactured equity. Doing your small renovations, your granny flats, your extensions adds to the value of the property. In commercial, it's changing the tenants, doing a new fit out, getting new leases, and creating or meeting the demand of the market. So the uplift comes in changing the new tenant, getting a new lease, or better, taking care or refurbishing the property. So it's fundamentally different from residential to commercial, but the concept is the same. Creating the uplift, meaning that it gives you the additional leverage for you to go and buy again, because that additional leverage means you can refinance against it, pull the money out and do it again. But at the same time, you're getting an increase in rents, in cash flow, increase in security, and increase in the quality of the property. So those things make it super important for you to hold it for the long term or even to sell it to an investor. So now we know what undervalue is, what uplift is. Let's go into the three pillars that you need to know in order to find an uplift property. Now, the number one thing I look at is gentrification. Has this area changed in the last 10, 5 to 12 months? So what do I mean by gentrification? It actually means that the area is getting fancier. So when it means it gets fancier, it means that once it was maybe a really heavy industrial area where we have 1,000, 2,000 or 10,000 square meters of land, and we have a 3,000 square meter warehouse or a 1,000 square meter warehouse on it, lots of trucks, lots of your B doubles, and just very heavy manufacturer industry there. Now over time, as the residential pushes out, our urban sprawl pushes out, what we're going to find is people don't like heavy industry next to their residential houses. They don't like the grinding, they don't like the traffic, they don't like the noise of it. So what happens is the council goes in, rezones the area, tries to push these heavy industries out, and what comes in is medium and light industry. Now, medium and light industry means that the value of land had actually gone up. Now, with the value of the land going up, it means that the prices of these land, the warehouses, the rents, they all start to go up. This is gentrification. So what really happens, we've gone from all the trucks and everything else to now having just your service trade tenants. So that could be your mechanic, that can be, let's say, your dance studio that's in little warehouses, that could even be your play centers, that could be your gyms. So it becomes a little bit more trade, but a little bit more retail, right? And then of course the area change even more as more and more people come into this area. Now they're going to push out and get rid of warehouse industrial altogether, and what they're going to bring in is more your retail office spaces and high rises. At that point, you would find the value of the land and rent have tripled, or sometimes even quadrupled, or 10 times depending on how fast it's happened, from when it used to be a heavy impact, big industrial land to now that it is in an office in a high rise, right? And that's really the definition of gentrification. The area gets fancier. The tenants change. You've gone from a heavy industry tenant to now a white collar, potentially a lawyer's office or an accountant's office who's paying premium rents, right? You might have brand name tenants downstairs in your retail. They're paying top notch prime premium rents. And that's gentrification. That's one of the key things I look at, is how has the areas changed? How has the value changed? How has the perception of the market and the demographics of the people that live in this area have changed over time to keep the value up and continue to grow? So that's the number one thing. Number two is I look at short leases. Why do I look at short leases? I look at short leases and I know that you can't do an uplift while you want security. So if you are looking for security, as in 5, 10, 15-year leases, tenants been there for 20 years and haven't moved, that is not an uplift property. That is your set and forget anchor investment properties. And if you want that type of property, I've got a separate video all about how to invest in those type of properties, those set and forget properties, and a heap of other tips in my channel about it, so do check that out. But the main thing is, if you're looking for uplift, you can't have security with your uplift. There's going to be an element of risk, and that risk comes in the form of short leases. The temporarity of the short leases means that your tenant could go in 12 months time, 18 months time, or even in 30 or 60 days. But when they go, you have a chance to change the property to meet the current market needs. So let's think about this. If, for example, you have a tenant that is a trade tenant that has been doing a lot of trade work, but more that they do a lot of manufacturing, but now there's a demand for more trade base, as in just your simple mechanics, people selling car parts, or maybe they just want a e-commerce tenant that does B2C, as in business to consumer, to pick up goods, or to be actually shipping it all around Australia. So at the moment, you have a current tenant that's there that doesn't fit the purpose of it, and they're not paying that rent. Let's say that the new tenants in the area are paying $300 a square meter. Your tenant might be paying $150, $200 a square meter, and they're on a short lease. When that lease comes up in 12 months time, or 6 months time, or 18 months, or whatever time it is, you go back to the tenant and you say to the tenant, hey, Mr. Tenant, guess what? The rent now in this area is $300 a square meter. Your rent is at $150 or $200 a square meter. If you want to stay in this premise, you need to pay $300 a square meter. Now, that tenant may not be able to afford $300 a square meter simply because his business margins does not allow him to pay $300 a square meter. So he'll have to move out. Now, that's going to leave you a bit of a gap where you're going to need to have a buffer. So when you do an uplift project, one of the things you need to know is you need to have a defined pile of cash. And if you join us for one of our events on Uplift, a part of the Unicorn community, we're going to tell you how much that pile of cash you're going to need and what the formula is going to be able to do an Uplift deal successfully. Now, my name is Helen Tarrant. I help everyday Australians become wealthy and retire with passive income through commercial property. If you want to find out more, you want a team to help you, and you want to get to financial freedom faster and earn your passive income, then you need to click the link below, book in a strategy call with us, and let Unicorn show you how you can get there in the next 3, 5, and 7 years with a defined plan.